an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering ReAwakened, the Children of Divinity Anthology 1 short story, Jill's Run. In this short story, Jill is such a teenager. Oh my God. Truly. Like, I want to have sympathy. I know I like Jill, but I hated her so much throughout all of this. I truly did. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Heather for commissioning this episode. Heather is here in the chat. Hi, Heather. So, yeah. Guys, Jill. I first want to mention that I made a joke about how Heather broke out because she wanted a latte. And I could not believe that that was like one of the first things that she says. And I think she even specifically mentions a caramel macchiato, which was what I predicted she would want. I am going to take all the credit for that. I love it. I'm very happy about it. But yeah, the thing about Jill is that she is written as correctly as one can write a teenager. And for the most part, teenagers suck. They're the worst. Like, it's not their fault. That's what sucks so much about it. They cannot help it. Like, literally can't. I remember what it was like. You feel everything so acutely and so deeply. Everything about the world around you feels exaggerated and somehow like it's just so much all the time. And it's a combination of hormone surges, which I know can sound really dismissive, but it's like hormones run our lives. Like, just to be perfectly honest about it, any woman who has to go through a monthly cycle knows that hormones completely dominate how you feel and react to things all the time. So saying, oh, it's hormones, sounds like you're acting like it's nothing and that you should be able to be in control of yourself. But when I say it, that is not what I mean. I mean, it's hormones like there's a part of you that probably does know you're not reacting in a like sane way, but you don't have control over that. That's the thing, is hormones make you feel before you can think. And so, you know, speaking from experience, I remember at that age just having immediate, really strong reactions to stuff and feeling so completely overwhelmed all the time. And even now, whenever I'm having hormone surges, I'll just turn into like immediate anger, immediate joy, crying at the drop of a hat over nothing. It's real. So that's part of it. And the other part of it, I think, is just when you're that young, everything is new. So everything is getting imprinted on your brain. Like all of these experiences, because you are transitioning to a new stage of your life that are new and different and exciting and also like really supercharged in a variety of ways. Charged in that it can feel like it's determining the course of the rest of your life. Charged in like just sexually, which is a major motivating factor here, which makes a ton of sense because I wanted to fuck all the time at her age. I could not stop thinking about it. It was ridiculous, like genuinely a problem. That's just nature doing its thing, I guess, but nature can just go screw. Well, that's what nature wants me to do. But yeah, so I have all the sympathy for Jill, but she sucks in this. Like, she's just so infuriating to listen to. It's a combo of her simultaneously knowing that Jordan is not really to blame, but wanting somebody to blame and being aware that that's what's going on and doing it anyway. Her being spoiled in the way that she is, and her like doing all of this in reaction to a dude who is clearly garbage. Like this dude that she is super into, supposedly, she says she loves. I really appreciated that her sister later is like, you've been dating him like a month, and inevitably she gets on the motorbike. She's picked up by this other guy named Lex, I think, and if she's thinking to herself, maybe I'll give him my number, actually, even though I told him I'd give him my sister's number. And I'm like, bitch, you were just like, oh my God, I love Mitch so much. And now you're over here like, maybe I'll give this guy my number. You just want to fuck. Can you just be honest with yourself? But she can't, because she doesn't realize. She doesn't get it yet. Heather is saying she's a bit spoiled and overly indulged, which doesn't help 100% by her father and older sisters especially, which is super obvious too. At one point, her sister like looks at her and sees her trying to sneak out and doesn't do anything. And I could not understand what was running through her mind at that point. Like, you're letting her leave? Why? What are you doing? What do you think you're accomplishing? Like, genuinely, what good did you think was going to come of this? I think this was her, like, trying to be supportive, and it's the opposite of that. It's just so irresponsible and harmful in the long term in a way that I just find inexcusable. But we'll get there. So, it starts with a text, "I'm done, don't call me." And it turns out that this dude texted her after getting arrested at a rave. Now, the thing that happens here is that this dude is drunk. I called him Mitch. His name is Marty. Sorry, Marty. Not really. He is drunk. And these guys show up, Shaw being one of them, to take her and bring her into protective custody. And Marty gets really fucking mouthy. And he is posturing so hard here. It's embarrassing. I do like the detail that Jill steps back and sort of lets him act a fool because she's sort of into it. That 100% feels like a thing. Like, I don't know how I would have reacted, because I am somebody who just has an innate respect for authority that's not always super healthy. And so I imagine that I in this position and a dude was like acting the way Marty is, I would be like, dude, what are you doing? Shut up. Like, I would probably be embarrassed by it, but I can understand it being attractive in its way, you know? So let's see. We need to put you into protective custody. There's a situation. Empowered by the confidence of a few too many drinks, Marty cut Agent Shaw off. Then take care of it, mate. We're all right here. The tall agent quirked an eyebrow, but kept his tone polite and even. Mr. Dean, this matter doesn't concern you. I suggest you go back inside and enjoy the party. I said shove off, Marty retorted rudely. You wankers aren't wanted round here. Take your jackboots and go bother some terrorist or something. Halfway to titillation, Jill struggled to keep a smile off her face. She enjoyed Marty's protectiveness, and for better or worse, let him continue. For worse, Jill. For very much worse. So eventually, Marty steps forward and shoves Shaw, which just genuinely is so embarrassing. He really thinks that he is doing something here. And what's so annoying is that if this were a different situation, he would be doing something here. Because what he's trying to do is show off for Jill, and clearly it's working. He's not wrong about the effect that this will have on her. So that's what sucks, is that he's doing something that's like truly immature and shitty in an effort to get laid. And that is exactly the right recipe, except it's the wrong situation. And I hate that for both of them, that they feed into each other in this way. It's bad. They should not be together. So Jill blinked as things suddenly turned physical between her boyfriend and the agent. The fact that Marty was ready to take on a guy who was much larger than he was excited Jill, but she realized what her boyfriend was up against.
You really don't, though, Jill.
She realized what her boyfriend was up against. You just so don't. And what's wild is that at the beginning of this story, she's thinking about how she's pretty sure Jordan's like a super spy. She doesn't know, and she knows what the like official story is, but in her mind, she's just like, yeah, and that's all horseshit. She 100% is too much into like action and movement and whatnot to be somebody who just does like analysis. That's not her. So she knows this. And yet these guys come to get her, and she doesn't like stop to think about what that might say about the associates Jordan would have coming to her aid. So Jill put her hand on Marty's shoulder. Wait a second. Full of ire and booze, Marty ignored Jill and lunged toward Shaw with his hand outstretched. Fuck you. You don't know who my dad is, do you? I don't think we know who his dad is either. I may be wrong about this. I am curious. But this really completely took the wind out of it for me, because up till this point, as much as Marty's being an idiot, a part of me was like, he doesn't like cops. I feel like that's a pro. But then when he has this attitude, I was like, oh, ew, okay, super privileged. Like, I keep forgetting Jill's background. I keep forgetting Jordan's background. And, of course, a guy that Jill's hanging out with would probably be from a really, like, quote, high-class background. So as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, this is even worse. Like, you're trying to show off what a badass you are, but you probably have a trust fund somewhere. And like, just, you know, there's nothing punk about this kid at all. Let's see. Heather says, we do not, and it doesn't really matter. I believe he's kind of a minor noble / landed noble, or maybe a parliament brat. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. The young man reached forward to curl his fingers into Shaw's pristine white shirt, a look of outrage on his young face. Only Marty knew what his intent had been in the action, and that's how it would remain. Shaw exploded into action, so basically he takes Marty down by almost dislocating his shoulder and forcing him to his knees. And he's telling Marty to calm the fuck down and shut up, and Marty is still like, get off me, what are you doing? And I'm like, dude, you are outclassed. Can you fucking come to your senses? Sober up, man. What are you doing? So let's see. Oh yeah, here it is. Using the momentum, he maneuvered the young man's arm behind him, send him to the Met and tell him to cool him overnight. Do you have to? Jill asked. He's drunk. He is. He's also stupid. But I doubt a night enjoying the hospitality of the Metropolitan Police is going to fix that. Fuck you, cunts, Marty growled as the two agents cuffed him up. After glancing at Marty, Jill hurried up next to Shaw and started to put a hand on his arm. I'll go with you, just don't put him in jail. His dad thinks we're studying. And basically Shaw's like, that's not how this works. So she's like, I won't go unless you let Marty go. And at this point, Shaw and the other dude like exchange looks and mention how your sister warned us that you were really stubborn. And she's like, no, I'm not. But she does get in the car, which I feel like is a nice kind of like reverse psychology that seemed to have worked on her. So The young man was being escorted to a second SUV by the other 2 agents, cursing all the way. He tried to break free again and then spit in one man's face. That seemed to be the limit of the man's patience, and he punched Marty in the side so hard the boy doubled over in pain. His legs gave out entirely, and the agents let him fall onto the dusty gravel parking lot. So this dude winds up to punch Marty again. Now let me be clear. She did in a passing reference to Obama. I do not condone police brutality. However, Marty sucks. I'm not mad that this dude punched him after getting spit in the face. Okay? Also, however, though, 1 punch per spit. You punched him, he went down. Leave it. That's it. You get the 1. I won't blame you for that. And now it's over. You punch him and he goes down and you wind up to punch a second time? No, I don't think so. Now you're heading into like a rage thing, and that's different. Don't like it. And as much as I sympathize, like, look, ideally, cops would be able to tolerate all kinds of shit and never, ever have to resort to violence. I really don't think we should have cops. That's a whole other conversation. But as somebody who has my own anger issues, I can understand how being spit in the face, you're going to have a reaction to that. I'm not trying to ask this guy to be superhuman and just take it and be like totally calm. But there's a line. Also, again, Marty's just the worst. He seems like the kind of kid that would benefit from being beaten up. Like, he just does, you know? Like, there's just some people who are like that. He's the kind of kid that I think you should, like, send to military school or something. Just something where there's, like, really strict guidelines and rules and regulations, because clearly just... So, at this point, Shaw yells at the guy, Robeson, I think he says his name is. I don't remember if we know this guy. It doesn't sound familiar to me. But Jill is, like, taking note using her ability, which apparently she can, like, sense the movement of energy in people's bodies, as well as, like, the activity of their organs and stuff. So at one point she's, like, checking out Shaw's amygdala. I think that's what she's looking at. Oh yeah, here it is. It's right here. The area the agent had punched was dark orange bordering on red. Oh, this is her checking out Marty. It was turning into a bruise, but nothing that was life-threatening. Jill caught the faint scent of urine and realized the man had hit Marty so hard he lost control of his bladder. And honestly, again, I am fine with Marty being humiliated like this. What sucks is that probably him being humiliated and then this guy being reined in is just going to make him, like, more resentful and shitty. It's probably not going to have the effect that I want it to have, which is to humble him. But it is, in the short term, very satisfying. It's just that this kid, like, you know, there's... So anyway, she gets into the SUV finally, and... Let's see. I'm going to the hospital with him. No, you're not, Shaw said, and watched Laird put Marty in the back of the second SUV. I'm sorry for what my man did, but it doesn't change anything. We have to get you to a safe location. Once we're there, I'll be able to explain what's going on. And this is when she checks out Shaw. The man was trying to hide it, but the tightness around his eyes and the set of his jaw spoke volumes. He was angry. Blood vessels, capillaries, adrenaline. With his body mostly obscured by the seat, Jill couldn't see everything. What drew her attention was a series of angry orange and red flares haloing the man's amygdala. The almond-shaped portion of Shaw's brain was full of emotion, mostly anger. Those energy arcs flared brightly as Shaw turned his gaze on the man he had called Robeson, and Jill immediately recognized the association. At least you're not a total bastard. So, yeah, this moment of him like saying, of him showing, I should say, that he does not approve of his partner's behavior and is pissed about it, it warms her to him a little bit. And then she says, you know this is bullshit, right? And he says, Shaw looked over his shoulder at Jordan's youngest sister, his expression neutral. Lots of things, oh, I think there's a typo there. Lots of things in life are. You'll get used to it. Which, that is true facts. Lots of things in life are bullshit. So, we jump ahead in time. And Jill, or we jump back, I guess, because this is really a flashback. And she is sitting there crying in her room. This is one of those things, again, where I really wonder how I would have reacted as a teenager. There are some things that I remember so clearly about how I felt all the time, about how intense everything was. And then there's things that I feel like I must have a sort of romanticized isn't the right word. Overly charitable probably is really the word. I think that I probably overestimate my capacity for like being rational and thinking things through. I have it all tempered in my head, but I bet if I went back and actually talked to myself, I'd sound like a fucking dipshit. So this reaction that she's having to being pulled out of an illegal rave, her boyfriend getting punched, and then her being like locked in the house. I don't know if they give her any information. It doesn't feel like they do. It feels like she just gets gripped up, taken home, thrown in a room, and then they just sort of carry on with the rest of their work with like scanning the perimeter, you know? And I really wanted somebody to sit down with her and be like, there has been an attempt on your sister's life. There has been a threat against your life, and it's credible. There has been an incident, you know, so-and-so. Like, anything, I understand that there's only so much information they can actually share. They could even just lie and make up a series of things. Anything to give her some real reason why this is happening to her. But it feels like they don't do any of that. And I don't know even how much Marissa knows, because Marissa comes and talks to her. It turns out Marissa's a cop. And she's 4 years older. And I didn't get the impression that Marissa really knew much of what was going on, but we also have a moment of her sort of like flirting with Shaw. And so I thought, like, is she flirting with Shaw on purpose to get information because she doesn't have any? Does she know something because she's flirting with Shaw? Is she flirting with Shaw like to distract him from Jill specifically? Because she seems to like know where Jill is. And then she sends him away to find her phone purposely to give Jill an opportunity to leave. I gotta say, not thinking much about Marissa at this point. We don't know anything about her, but the fact that she was willing to do this, I was just like, high key, what are you doing? So Marissa's like, I just wanted to see how you were doing. And she tells her, he dumped me. Shit. I'm sorry, Jill. It's not your fault, Marie. It's Jordan's. I mean, it's absolutely not, and in no way is it. But, okay, sure. Heather says, my impression was that Mari sent Shaw away, intending to scold Jill without doing it in front of a stranger. Okay, here's my thing with that, Heather. And I understand how it could be read that way. But what bothered me is that Jill goes down this like tunnel that is something that apparently the girls have been taught about. And if Mari she turns away, she looks back, Jill's gone. There's no sense that she chases after Jill. There's no sense that she's attempting to find her after. It just sort of like ends. And it's treated as if Jill is a ghost somehow. And, she looked away and who knows where she could be now. But Mari should know where Jill is heading because there's really one way, very obvious way, to get out of the house. So why wouldn't she kind of head her off? Especially because Jill takes a minute to go and let all of the dogs out and use tennis balls to distract a bunch of the guys who are doing surveillance. There's plenty of time for Mari to go into that bathroom and just sit on the edge of the tub and be like, what are you doing when Jill walks in? Which I kind of thought might happen. Because so much time passes and it seems so clear what Jill is up to. She's dressed in all black. She's sneaking around. I mean, it's very obvious what she's trying to do. And it just seemed super strange that she makes eye contact, sends him away, and then makes no effort to go after Jill after that. So for me, it just read like she was helping. It just didn't seem at all as if she wanted to stop Jill, I don't know. I might be misreading it, but to me, that's how that came across. And this conversation, she just fucked up my entire life. I love Marty and now he hates me. Marissa's look was skeptical. Really? You've been seeing him for what, a month and a half? Here we go. Jill avoided Marissa's eyes. It doesn't matter. You just know it when it happens. You may be content with a battery-operated boyfriend, but I'm not. The bait wasn't taken, and Marissa stayed on topic. Good for you, Marissa, because that was really some obvious shit, but it does feel like something a teenager would say. So Marissa is just like, I came up to see how you were doing. If you don't want to talk, fine. I'll be in my room. She leaves. And Jill is kind of like, shit, she was trying to be nice, and I'm just being a dickhead. But she's also just really frustrated, Out in the garden behind the house, Jill could see two of the security detail. One man was carrying a powerful flashlight in one hand while the other rested on his weapon. So we have this moment here where she's sees this guy's weapon and she's able to tell what it is from a video game. Which that could be a thing. I don't play these kinds of games. I have no idea if that's the kind of knowledge that you pick up. So this is the sort of thing that I'm just that's weird, but sure. And she noted the other man was carrying a different sort of rifle, black like the first, but sleek, and the magazine was twice as thick. So she's watching, and then she sees another pair coming around, and they have night vision goggles. And she goes and gets her fucking flashlight and shines it out onto their faces just to be an asshole. I think part of her is trying to see what it is they're working with, but there is definitely a part of her that's also just enjoying the fact that they're flinching and uncomfortable. So we jump ahead to Jill waved at the two and then shut off her flashlight. Smiling, she sat at her laptop and brought up a web browser. Let's start with handheld thermal scopes. I didn't really understand what this meant because when she winds up heading out later, it doesn't seem like she needed to know what kind of is she, let's see, Jill guessed they must be some sort of thermal sensor or motion detector. Is she trying to tell whether or not they'd be able to see her if she attempted to escape the house? Is that what this is meant to be? That she's looking up what equipment they had in their hands in order to try and assess how prepared they would be for her attempt to break out? I just wasn't really sure because initially I thought this was her trying to get something for herself. And then I was like, that doesn't make sense. And we cut immediately from there to her sneaking down the stairs. So I was just a little bit confused by that. Okay. Heather says she's trying to figure out if they would easily be able to differentiate the heat of the dogs versus the heat of a person. Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. I did not realize that. So she starts down the stairs and eventually she tries to use her phone to see around a corner, and she forgets to turn the sound off. This is one of those things that is a bit of a trope that I've seen before, where somebody forgets to turn the sound off on their camera when they're trying to be surreptitious. But it is such a thing that genuinely happens all the time that the trope never bothers me, because it's so, like, it is wild to me. I operate almost exclusively from the moment that I got a cell phone on vibrate. I don't have sound turned on for anything ever. And it is wild to me when people have sound enabled, like for notifications, or like both Rashawn and Owen will type and I can hear the like clicking because they have that like feedback on, like turned on for their touchscreen. I cannot believe anybody like operates with that actually turned on. I just don't want any sound. Are you kidding me? Like, no. But evidently people do it. So her turning, and even when you like try and set things up on your phone, sometimes you can just like accidentally hit the thing and turn all sound back on. So she like accidentally takes this really loud photo, but it turns out nobody seemed to hear her. And there's a couple of moments here where Jordan's voice is in her head and she's like feeling really victorious for a minute and just hears Jordan say, "Isn't that premature?" And it's like a reminder of a memory that she has of playing chess, and Jordan had like made some mistake. I think that Jill had thought, "Oh, that's it, I've got her." And then Jordan manages to win the game anyway. Like, Jill really thinks that there's no possible way she can lose at this point. And Jordan completely, like, dismantles her. Let's see. Marissa was sauntering along the hall with Agent Shaw. Their pace was casual, and they were a bit closer together than two people who weren't well acquainted would stand. Marissa was dressed differently than before. A pair of tight black jeans hugged Marissa's hips, and she had donned an all too familiar Hello Kitty shirt that was too small. The black material of the shirt didn't quite reach Marissa's waist, so it left a tantalizing amount of her toned midriff bare. My shirt! She's using my shirt to land some guy and stretching the crap out of it! This was so funny to me. This is what gets Jill to like step into the hall in almost full view of Shaw. It's just her like overwhelming anger at the fact that this bitch stole her shirt, which is hilarious. Like, this is one of those things that I don't have siblings, and I have never, like, the closest I got was there was a time for me in high school where my mom had me pretty young. So when I was in my 14 to 17 range, my mom was only like 33 and still in like good shape. And we were around the same size. So I borrowed my mom's clothes sometimes because she had some really cool, like hippie sort of boho outfits that I really liked. However, my mom, she worked. And so those clothes were stuff that she would wear on weekends. And often if I wore them to school, it didn't matter. But I've heard the stories about living with sisters and them stealing your clothes and stuff when you're close enough in size and age, and you being like ready to wear something the next day and going to get it, and it being not only like gone, but dirty or ruined perhaps. And the little things like that I'm like, look, I'm sure that's like something you can look back on and laugh and be like, siblings. I can't imagine how angry I would be. I would lose my mind. Like, just no. No, thank you. So Marissa saw Jill first and made eye contact with her. To Marissa's credit, she kept her expression schooled and didn't alert Agent Shaw to the fact that she had noticed her black-clad sister storming around the corner. You let your emotions get the better of you too often, Jill. The youngest Law blinked as Jordan's voice admonished her again. Jill realized she had her fists balled so tightly the joints of her fingers hurt. All the anger contained within Jill was about ready to burst out of her at the perceived transgression. "You know what? I think I left my mobile in the living room," Marissa said, and started to turn around. Shaw took his gaze from Marissa's face and glanced back the way they'd come. "I'll go grab it for you." "Thanks," Marissa replied, a pretty smile on her face. As soon as Shaw was off down the hall, she looked back at Jill, her expression transforming into a stern mask. There was no sign of Jill. So yeah, the stern mask, this was part of why I sort of thought, okay, she's going to head her off, or like, you know, Jill is going to have to simultaneously duck Marissa. But we never see her again. And I know how big the house is meant to be. Obviously, like, this is, they have like what is it? Like 12-foot wall? Something like that? 9 feet? It's a big estate. So I can understand if it were like, well, who knows where she went from here. But because there's just a real one secret way to get out, I just expected her to go straight for that. But we just don't see her again. And I wonder what she was doing. I genuinely can't make heads or tails of it. Like, after you turn, she's gone. He went to get your phone. What would she do? I would assume she would make an excuse and either try and track her down, or... Because, like, the thing is, if she went to the bathroom, where the exit is, I don't know if she would want to tell Shaw. That's the main thing, is that Shaw is in the house. So how much does she want to tip her sister's hand and be like, yeah, this bitch was definitely trying to leave? I feel like she doesn't want to do that, because she knows that they will then just like basically put a padlock on Jill's door and make everything sort of worse. But yeah. So Jill comes around this other corner, and this is when she runs into the dogs. And she goes and gets some tennis balls. She has this moment that I did appreciate. She's about to throw the balls out the back and get the dogs just flying across the yard to distract these guys. And for a moment, she's like, I really hope they don't shoot these fucking dogs. I mean, I don't think they will. They're professionals, and I think they'll see pretty quick that they aren't me. But I really, if they did, I would fucking feel terrible. And I side with her. I don't think that they would be in danger. I think that the shape of their bodies would be different enough that they would know right away. But nevertheless, I did appreciate it being mentioned, because I was kind of like, oh, this seems like really risky for them. So here's where we find this secret exit. Jill grabbed the wide towel rack against the wall and twisted the bar away from her. There was a soft click, and the entire tiled section lifted up, revealing a stone stairwell heading down into darkness. And I was like, what? I didn't expect this at all. And I don't know, like, because it's mentioned, the tunnel had been there since the original stone keep had been constructed. Their family had kept it up through the generations until her father had moved, until her father had moved in, the passage was left spider-filled and dark. Now it had been kept up and ready for use. Her father, Cassidy, was a retired SAS officer and very mindful of the family's security. What is SAS? Heather, if you want. I don't know this one. I'm guessing that it's sort of like Special Air Service. Okay. As far back as Jill could remember, he had always told the family that because of their means and status, they would be targets for criminals. He trained all of his children to spot unusual things like people following them in strange cars, to be ready in case they were ever kidnapped. I question if that is actually what it looked like. Because of their means and status, they would be targets for criminals. Maybe. I mean, rich people are much less a target than one would think. It's usually the poor that get hit by other poor. I wonder if he knows about their abilities. Like, how much is he aware of, and how much does he know they may be spotted and in danger eventually due to that? Because I don't know. This just feels like there's something else happening there. I don't know. So she starts to head down the tunnel, and eventually she reaches this sort of like alcove that has security cameras and whatnot. Excuse me. And flicks them all on. She can see the grounds and everything, so she knows where everybody is. I feel like the fact that this stuff is just like chilling, ready to turn on at any time. I would be so paranoid living in a house that had all of this stuff set up. Even if I knew that it was in a sort of inconvenient location for somebody to spot it. This is sort of how I feel about like a lot of security stuff of this type. I don't know if any of you have like Rings, you know, those cameras at your front door and whatnot. It's the sort of thing I understand in principle why people would want it. And it does seem to have an advantage. There have been a few things that, like, if they didn't have this camera mounted here, it would have gone differently. But this whole series of cameras all over the place, and somebody can just watch all over. It's not like they're in bedrooms or bathrooms, you know? But man, it would be really weird to live somewhere that has the same kind of security cameras that you would be used to having at work, you know, where they are able to film you like in the back room, on the floor, whatever. I'm talking as a retail person. It would just be weird to know that. And it doesn't seem, I might be wrong about this, but it doesn't seem like they're recording, you know, and it's not even turned on. She has to turn everything on. But nevertheless, maybe just growing up around it, you just get used to it, you know? Let's see. Just trying to find the next spot here. Oh, right. So she has red cellophane wrapped around her flashlight, which is a really good idea. And she manages to get out to the main part of the property. And there's all this like these fake rocks and moss and whatnot on the trap door that leads out. So when she gets out here, she is realizing that, okay, she has this brick wall that she has to scale now. This is going to be a problem. She's looking around. She finds this one tree. What I found really funny about this is logic was still subdued. So it didn't even occur to Jill how easily she could hurt herself. If that isn't the damn truth. There are so many things that I think back at how cavalier I was about doing them. And I can't understand what my fucking brain was. Like, what? And I wasn't even as bad as a lot. I would even say the majority of kids my age. I had a healthy amount of, like, anxiety already. I already had a respect for authority figures and rules built in. So I wasn't out here like doing drugs and drinking, you know, like I didn't, but still, I still did shit. And I can't imagine other people I know of what they were thinking, you know? Heather in the chat says, oh my God, so many times I could have died. Yeah. It's just wild. Like, truly, you think you're invincible. It's true. So, not once as she shoved off from the trunk of the tree and took 2 steps along the branch did it register that she could fall and break her neck. So she manages to overthrow herself a little bit here. She had meant to go to the wall, but she goes past the wall and winds up landing on the ground on the other side. And thankfully is able to land without hurting herself, but it's like a close thing. And all of the security guys hear the branches of the tree move really suddenly as she like shoves off, but they don't spot her. And even if they did, she'd be over the wall. So like, how are they going to get around the wall to her before she manages her getaway? Because as it turns out, this was what I was asking myself from the moment that she gets on the computer. And I started to be like, all right, so this is the point where she decides she's going to sneak out, because we know already from the novel that she successfully gets out, right? All I could think of was, why? Where is she going? I assumed that there was going to be something with Marty. And once I stopped to think about it, I was like, he just dumped her. So, I mean, I guess I expected that, like, you know, the camera sort of cuts away as she sits at her computer, cuts back, and she's sneaking out. And since the last time we saw her, she has been in contact with Marty, and she manages to, like, set something up with him. I think that's what I thought, that there was a reconciliation of sorts that happened off camera. I also, though, was like, isn't he in custody? Because she says something earlier about how, like, I'll go with him to the hospital. And I was like, it didn't seem like he was injured badly enough that even if they brought him to the hospital, that he would stay there. Honestly, I don't feel like they would bring him to the hospital. I think that they would bring him to wherever and have him looked at there, because his injuries just didn't seem that bad to me. So my question then was like, how did he get away from these guys who took him for her to meet up with him? I just kept trying to like go through it in my head, what it is that she wants to get out of this. Well, as it turns out, she doesn't have a fucking plan. So she comes over the wall, and this guy on a motorcycle pulls up to pick her up. And I'm thinking, of course, at this point, that this is Marty. I'm like, oh, okay, he's picking her up. Like, I'm thinking, here it is. They made a, arrangement after the camera cut away, so to speak. And here he is. No, this is a guy named Lex, who I don't know if we know him. I don't remember his name. And here it is. With her arms around Lex's midsection, Jill rested the side of her face against the black and white leather riding jacket he wore. She was surprised how pleasantly solid he felt. Jill's email had promised Lex her sister Deirdre's phone number and £50 for his trouble. The choice may have been right at the time. However, now Jill pondered just giving the 21-year-old her own number and the money. Bitch, what happened to Marty, though? So, he asks where to, and she says, London, but let's swing by a petrol station on the edge of the city. I need to change. What's in London? Lex asked. Jill's brow furrowed. She hadn't really considered that at all. This dumb bitch. I swear to God. She says shopping. And Lex is like, it's 3:00 in the fucking morning, you lunatic. What are you talking about? And then she's like, oh, and Starbucks. Yeah, she smiled in anticipation at the thought of a caramel macchiato. I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I said caramel macchiato last episode. I think I did. If I didn't, I was thinking it. And I cracked up here. That's not open yet either. You have no idea where you're going, do you? Oh my God. Look, I may have been an idiot as a teenager. I fully admit. But I never, ever in my life would bother sneaking out of the house without a very clear idea of where I'm going. Like, it's wild to me that she set up him meeting her and picking her up, but she didn't even, tell him or get asked where she wanted to go from there, and didn't give that any thought at all. Like, what? So he says, Oh, yeah. You have no idea where you're going. Wherever you are, mate, let's ride, Jill shouted and threw both of her arms in the air above her head. She was free, at least for now, and that was good enough. And I can't help but wonder what Lex is thinking, because, like, I have to admit, is Lex a night owl? Because I want to think that Lex was, like, gonna be asleep. And he thought, 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm getting 50 pounds. All right, I'll go pick her up, drop her wherever, and then I'll come home and go back to bed. And now this asshole is like, oh, no. We're going to stay out all night. You're going to keep me company. And he's like, what? No, that was not part of the deal at all. I did not. I have work in the morning. Like, what are you talking about? I have no idea anything about Lex. He may not have a job. He may not care. But just the idea of thinking that you only agreed to, like, break her out, and then it turns out that she has no plan and fully intends to rope you into whatever it is that she's doing. And, like, at 3 o'clock, genuinely, where are you going to go? That's a lot of time to kill before shit starts to open. If it were 6 in the morning, that's one thing. You know, you've got an hour until Starbucks opens, then a couple hours until, like, maybe malls open or something. But it's 3 a.m. There's going to be bars, maybe. Most bars close at 2 in the US. I don't know if bars are like 24 hours anywhere in the UK, but the US, I don't think we're allowed to have 24-hour bars because of really old-fashioned blue laws. There's 24-hour diners. You know, if I busted out of somewhere at 3 a.m., I could go to a diner or like an IHOP. But you can't just hang out at an IHOP for 4 hours. I guess you could if you just kept eating food. But eventually, if you don't keep ordering, they're going to kick your ass out. You could IHOP hop. Just go from one IHOP to another. So, like, this is the kind of thing that makes me feel like she's gonna get caught only because there's nowhere to go. There's no, like, crowds of people to disappear into. It's 3 a.m. Nothing's open. Nobody's out. There's not even going to be that many cars. I mean, I've lived in London. I know what it's like. And the city does die down significantly. It's a city, so it's always moving to a degree. But, like, 3 a.m. is even past the point when most clubs are still open. Like, people are probably going to be doing their walks of shame around this time, and that's about it. So, yeah, she just so clearly has not thought this through. She checked for signs of pursuit, and seeing none, Jill grinned fiercely and flipped her index and middle fingers in the direction of her house. The gesture of defiance made her feel powerful, even if nobody saw it. In your face, Jordan. Girl. No. I can't wait to see what Jordan does when they catch up with Jill. This is going to be bad. Like, I have to assume somebody winds up catching up with Jill. The bad guys, I would assume, have an eye on the house to a degree. Whether they're able to get close because of security doesn't even matter. If they're watching the house, and even if she manages to escape via an area that they aren't canvassing as thoroughly, if they're watching the house at all, they will begin to see movement that indicates somebody got out, right? They'll begin to see guys like begin to fan out, flashlights everywhere, cars gearing up as they like go out looking for her. They're gonna see indications that this isn't going right, which means that they are then going to begin to fan out and try and like head off whoever it is. I would think. This is all assuming that anybody is watching Jordan's house, which I'm assuming they are, but I honestly don't really know how much information. I mean, we know that they have her address, but yeah, I think they must be, right? I think they must be. So that means even if they don't actually like spot Jordan from the start and follow her from the start, they are going to be looking for her at the same time as the good guys are. And it's just a matter of timing and thinking ahead who finds her first. You know what? That's not true. Because these guys have fucking like extrasensory perception shit. They can smell the air and sense where she went. So I'm acting like they're on even footing. They're not on even footing at all. Like, if they begin to see indications that somebody got out, they could probably circle the house and just find like a scent in the air and follow it. 'Cause that shit seems to be like, it seems to remain for them. I don't know how, like, it's unclear to me how persistent a scent would remain in open air, especially considering that she's like on a motorcycle. So she's going at a pretty quick clip, which one would think might disperse her scent in the air more. I don't know if that makes it worse or better. But yeah, I just, this is why they should have sat her down and talked to her about what the actual situation was, or invented something. I really think if they can't tell her the truth, you can make something up that's still really scary and have that be your cover story, you know? And just because even if you are bucking against being held in place when you want to go out and live your life and fuck your boyfriend, even if that's happening, if somebody tells you a scary enough and dramatic enough story, there is a certain excitement and satisfaction to that, especially as a teenager. Yeah, I feel like they could have gotten, nobody seems to be really considering her even wanting to do this is the main thing. So I guess that's really the issue. Is I'm like, you should have said something to keep her on her best behavior. And it's like, I don't know. I guess they're just assuming that once they get her home, the battle's won, and what do they even have to worry about? But you guys weren't listening, clearly. So, all right, I have to wrap this up. But thank you very much, Heather, for commissioning this. I did like having the detour into the short story. That was fun. And we will return for the final chapters. I think there's 2 chapters left in the main novel in the next episode, which I think is on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yes, it is. All right, cool. I will see you back here on Friday. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.